I should have trusted my gut the second Kelly suggested we go to the party. It was one of those perfectly curated corporate events you see in marketing decks. Hosted by our boss, David Carter, CEO of Redbridge Group, at his glass-wrapped townhouse in Lincoln Park. White wine flowing like tap water, a skyline view meant for Instagram, hors d'oeuvres too pretty to eat. Kelly sold it like it was an obligation. Just an appearance, she said. Be social, kiss some rings, make a good impression. It's David's party. He'll notice if we're not there. I didn't love the idea of spending my Friday night pretending to laugh at finance bros and marketing interns with buzzwords for names, but I said yes, because I always did, because I thought that's what a husband was supposed to do. Show up, smile, make space for her shine. Kelly was glowing before we even left the apartment. Hair curled just enough to look like she hadn't tried, even though I knew she had. That green velvet dress, the one from our engagement party, back when she still looked at me like I was the only guy in the room. Now it clung to her like it owed her something, and I had to remind myself not to stare too long. Her lipstick was deep red. I noticed because she never wore that shade with me. She looked at herself in the mirror, then turned to me. You look nervous, she said. Just tired. You sure? Because you've got that look. The Evan, should we really be doing this face? I said I'm fine, Kelly. She didn't press it, just sprayed her perfume and walked out. By the time we arrived, the party was in full swing. Music, low enough to encourage small talk, filtered through the glass walls. People laughed too loud, hugged too long. Someone handed us champagne flutes before we even said hello. Kelly slipped into it like she'd never left, hugging coworkers, complimenting shoes, dropping names of projects I'd never heard of. I was just there. Background noise, her accessory, and then it started. Tiny jokes, subtle digs, just enough volume for the crowd to catch them. Evan's great, he's just allergic to fun. Aren't you, babe? Everyone chuckled. I smiled. Later, when I tried to join a group conversation about last quarter's rollout, she threw in, he's more analog than digital. Still thinks Excel is a video game. More laughs. Someone asked what I did, and before I could answer, she jumped in. He restores old cameras, like actual film. I tell him he's trying to bring back the 1950s one lens at a time. I laughed politely. They didn't even pretend to understand. I excused myself and went to the kitchen under the pretense of grabbing more champagne. Really, I just needed air, needed a second where I wasn't being dissected under her grin. That's when I heard it. A familiar ping. Kelly's phone was on the marble countertop, face up. The screen lit up. A hotel app notification. Digital key ready. The Peninsula, Chicago. Room 2103. Check-in today, 2 guests. And under that, the name Connor Bennett. I stared at it too long, hoping it would vanish, hoping I'd imagined it. Then she walked in. Hey, she said casually, biting into a macaron. They've got a truffle one out there. You'd hate it. I turned the phone screen toward her. Didn't say a word. She froze for half a beat. Not long, but enough. Oh, she said, blinking. God, that was supposed to be a surprise. A surprise? For the team, after party. Connor and I booked it for a small group. Something fun for the creatives. Champagne, dessert. You know how tight the budget's been lately, we paid out of pocket. You weren't supposed to see that. Ruins the effect. 2 guests. She laughed too brightly. It's just how the app does it. Don't be weird, Evan. And then I saw it. A smear of her lipstick. Bright red. The same shade she never wore with me. It was on the collar of someone's blazer, hanging on the kitchen stool behind her. Slim-cut navy. Definitely not mine. Probably his. I don't remember thinking. I just reached up, slid off my wedding ring, and placed it on the countertop beside the untouched dessert tray. She blinked again, slower this time. Her expression didn't crack, but her grip on the macaron tightened. What are you doing? I'm saving us both some time, I said. You don't need to keep pretending. Evan, you're overreacting. This is nothing. You're having an episode. No, I said quietly. This is clarity. She stepped forward, voice dropping. "Don't make a scene. Not here. We can talk." But I was already walking out. I passed by Connor in the hallway. He didn't look surprised. Just raised his drink slightly, like a silent toast. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air hit me like a wave. It was colder than I expected. Or maybe I was just too numb to feel anything real. I walked to the curb. No plan, no destination. Just away. Away from the polished perfection, the curated lies, the way she had slowly turned me into a joke for her coworkers. Away from the ring now sitting quietly in the kitchen of a house filled with laughter I no longer belonged to. They could keep their champagne and rooftop views. All I had was the truth now. And for once, that felt like enough. When I left that night, I didn't go home. I walked the streets of Lincoln Park until my phone died and my legs stopped arguing with me. The city looked different, like the lights themselves were watching. When I finally got back to our apartment, the first thing I noticed was how clean everything looked. Too clean. Like a showroom that someone had lived in just long enough to leave fingerprints behind. That night replayed in my head on loop, but it wasn't just about the hotel key. It was about everything leading up to it. All the small moments I had brushed off. The missed calls, the new habits, the way she had started saying, "You're imagining things." When I asked questions that deserved answers, I started tracing it back, month by month. That's when the pattern came into focus. The first time I remember something feeling wrong was 3 months before the party. Kelly skipped the annual charity photo event her company hosted downtown. She claimed she had to meet some of the new staff to prep a client presentation. The explanation was neat. Too neat. But the next week, one of the interns stopped by my workshop to pick up a camera I'd fixed for the firm's media department. We made small talk, and she mentioned casually that she'd seen Kelly that same night at a wine bar on Randolph. "She looked great," the intern said, smiling. "Was that her husband she was with?" He looked different from the photos. I remember the way the screwdriver slipped in my hand. A small cut on my thumb that didn't stop bleeding. I didn't ask Kelly about it. Not then. I told myself the intern was mistaken, that it was some other man, some other night. Denial can make you feel noble, like patience is a virtue. It's not. It's just cowardice in a cleaner coat. Then came the text messages. The ones that used to be full of affection. Tiny jokes, photos of her lunch, the occasional heart emoji, turned into dry, businesslike updates. Running late. Don't wait up. Big meeting tomorrow. Connor wants revisions before the client call. Connor. That name was already a frequency humming below everything. Even her voice changed. She used to talk to me like I was part of her story. Lately, she spoke to me like I was the audience she was tired of performing for. I started noticing smaller things. How she'd casually mention my episodes in front of people, painting me as the overly sensitive husband. "Evan gets like this sometimes," she'd say, smiling, while I was standing right there. It wasn't just belittling, it was strategic. She was rewriting the version of me that everyone else would believe later. Her photos started to feel off too. She posted less, but when she did, something about them felt rehearsed. I started paying attention to metadata, the small geotags hidden in file data. I noticed one marked not at her office downtown, but near the Peninsula Chicago. The same hotel from that night. I didn't say anything. I just saved it to a folder. Then there was the wallet incident. One evening, she asked me to grab her purse while she was on a call. I reached in to get her ID, and something fell out. A contactless card, black and unmarked, with a sleek metallic edge. Not a corporate card, not a credit card from any bank I recognized. I turned it over in my hand, and something about its weight felt deliberate, expensive. When I asked about it later, she said, "Oh, that's for building access. New security system." But the office had no such system. I checked. That was when the rationalizations started running out. I tried to ground myself in something real. My workshop became my refuge. A small space smelling of oil, leather, and dusted brass. I worked with my hands, fixing things that could actually be fixed. Cameras didn't lie. They didn't rewrite history. They only captured it. One afternoon, a week after the party, I found something that finally stripped away the last of my denial. It was her scarf, light gray, silk, barely worn. She'd left it draped over my workbench like a ghost had been there. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. She never came into my workshop. She said the smell of developer fluid made her nauseous. But that day, there it was. Alongside it, an open logbook I keep for repair orders. I flipped through it absent-mindedly, checking serial numbers and client initials. Halfway down the page, I froze. Her handwriting. Connor Bennett. Leica M3, full gift. I stared at those words until the letters lost meaning. The Leica M3 was the camera I'd spent 6 months restoring. The one I told her was for a client in New York. She'd taken it, gifted it, and written it down like she was keeping score. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. I just sat there, surrounded by half-finished cameras and the ghosts of things that used to make sense. Later that night, I turned on my laptop to check some invoices. When I opened the drafts folder, there it was, another message I wasn't supposed to see. A note in her tone but never sent, sitting quietly in digital limbo. He won't suspect anything. He's too wrapped up in his toys to notice. It was the kind of sentence that ends a marriage even if you never speak again. I closed the laptop, sat in silence, and listened to the clock tick. Each sound felt like a nail being driven into something once whole. That was when I realized I hadn't been living with my wife for months. I'd been living beside her, a reflection she could use when she needed to look innocent. Every late-night call, every new perfume, every "don't wait up" was part of a choreography designed to make me doubt my own instincts. And for a while, it worked. I told myself I was paranoid, that jealousy was an old reflex from my father, who always thought love meant possession. I told myself Kelly was ambitious, not cruel, that people in high-stress jobs acted differently sometimes. I told myself everything except the truth. The truth was simple. She wasn't hiding an affair anymore. She was rehearsing her exit. That night, I stayed in the workshop until dawn. I didn't touch a camera. I just sat there, letting the silence fill the cracks. When the sun finally rose, it landed on the Leica case sitting in the corner. Empty, the screws slightly misaligned from where she'd lifted it. And for the first time, I let myself say it out loud. She's gone. Not physically, not yet, but gone all the same. The apartment felt like an empty envelope. She hadn't taken everything, but it was clear she'd already started detaching. Her keys weren't on the hook. A third of the closet was bare. Her expensive hair straightener gone. Jewelry dish? Empty. The framed photo of us at Montrose Beach, the one she used to say, looked like a magazine spread? Missing. Not misplaced, removed. She'd been peeling herself out of my life like wallpaper, and I hadn't noticed until all that was left was the outline. It was Jenna, Kelly's sister, who dropped the match. I never thought I'd be sitting across from Jenna in a hollow apartment at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning, drinking stale coffee and talking about betrayal. She and Kelly weren't close. A few family holidays here and there, the occasional birthday brunch. But she showed up out of nowhere, buzzed up, and stepped into the doorway like she was entering a confession booth. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said, not meeting my eyes. I shrugged. "You're here now." She held out an envelope, thick, sealed, and silent. "This came to my place by mistake. It's hers, but you should see it." Inside was a packing invoice from a private shipping company. Not FedEx or UPS. One of those boutique services you use when something's fragile or illegal or both. I unfolded it slowly. Crate ID. Hashtag 1173RN. Item. Antique Leica M3 plus accessories. Destination. Bennett Capital Group. Attention. Connor Bennett. Ship date. 2 days ago. Declared value, $12,400. Sender, Kelly Lane. My heart didn't pound. It didn't even race. It just stopped, like it was listening. "She said it was a family heirloom," Jenna added. "Said you gave it to her dad, but your name wasn't anywhere on the form." I stared at the page. Her handwriting on the sender's line. A note at the bottom. "Hold for white glove delivery. Do not open." I asked Jenna, Why are you really here? She hesitated, then sighed. Because she's not coming back. There was no anger in her voice, just resignation, like someone had finally stopped fighting the tide. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a USB drive, and placed it on the table. What's that? She doesn't know I pulled it. I had to. I was staying with her last week. Just for a night. She went to bed early, said she had a brainstorm session with the team. I couldn't sleep, so I sat on the couch and I saw the footage when she left her tablet open. It's from the penthouse elevator. I didn't want to ask, but I did. Which penthouse? Jenna looked at me like I already knew. Connor's. I loaded the video onto my laptop, my hands steady in that numb, almost professional way. I'd seen things break before, glass, machines, bones. I knew what the beginning of a collapse looked like. The footage was grainy but clear enough. The camera angle faced the mirrored back wall of an elevator. The timestamp was the night Kelly said she was at the office midnight strategy session. She'd claimed. Instead, there she was, her hair pulled back, that same velvet green dress, one hand on Connor's chest, the other sliding along his neck. They weren't just kissing, they were familiar. They moved like this wasn't the first time or even the fifth. He laughed into her mouth. She smiled like it was home. They looked like a couple who'd long since stopped pretending to be discreet. The elevator doors closed. That was it. No excuses left. No more playing dumb, no more benefit of the doubt. This wasn't suspicion. This was fact. I closed the laptop slowly and looked across the table. She gave him the camera, I said flatly. Took it from my bench and shipped it to him like it was hers to give. Jenna nodded. She told him I didn't want it anymore. Said it was from her dad's collection. Of course she did. Rewrite the history. Reclaim the narrative. Control the object. She always knew that camera meant something to me. Not because of what it was, but because of what I'd put into it. The care. The hours. The process of restoration. And now it was just a gift. A lie inside a box. I stood up. Jenna stayed seated. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't know it had gone that far. It went further, I said, grabbing my jacket. I just haven't seen the rest yet. I drove without music. The city passed in grayscale. The only place I could think to go was her office. Not hers anymore, really. Just a nameplate still hanging on a door. I didn't expect to find her there. But I did expect someone would know where she'd gone. And someone did. The receptionist. Young, sharp, too well briefed. Didn't even blink when I gave my name. Oh, she said. Mr. Lane? Mr. Bennett said you might come by. I froze. He did. She nodded, handed me a visitor badge. You're cleared to go up. The elevator opened silently on the 23rd floor. The space looked like something out of a glossy architectural digest. Glass walls, chrome corners, furniture designed to be noticed but never used. And in the corner, Connor Bennett himself, waiting by the window like a man rehearsing lines. Evan, he said, thanks for coming. He wasn't smug. He wasn't apologetic either. Just composed, which somehow made it worse. I didn't come to talk, I said. I came to collect. I figured you would. He motioned to the sleek leather armchairs across from his desk. Can I show you something? Against my better judgment, I sat. He opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were access logs, swipe times, door entries, motion-activated timestamps. Her name appeared repeatedly. She was here almost every night for the last month, he said. But not always with me. What's that supposed to mean? Connor looked me dead in the eye. 3 nights ago, she came in at 3:17 a.m. Used her card to access one of our quiet rooms. Not a meeting space, not a brainstorm room, just isolated. Alone. No, she brought someone. He tapped a screen on his desk, showing a still frame from a hallway cam. Her and a man I didn't recognize. Tall. Not Connor. She didn't want to be seen, he said. But she knew I'd find out eventually. That's when I told her we were done. I didn't sign up to be part of a parade. I almost laughed. So you ended it. She made it easy. He reached under the desk, pulled out a printed document. A storage unit lease. Highlighted, 1 Leica M3 crate. Delivered to unit hashtag 88B. Address included. She told me it was an heirloom. Then she said it was a prototype. When I asked for documentation, she changed the subject. I didn't want it around. I took the paper, folded it once, and slipped it into my coat. Connor leaned back, studying me. I don't think you're angry, he said. I'm past anger. He nodded slowly. You should know, whatever game she's playing, it's bigger than either of us. I know, and I did. I stood, nodded once, and walked out without saying goodbye. In my pocket was the address to a storage unit on the outskirts of the city. I didn't know what I'd find there, but I knew it wouldn't be love. I didn't go to the storage unit that night. Instead, I went home, if you could call it that anymore. The apartment was more echo than space. Every sound dragged its shadow across the walls. I stood in the hallway for a long time, jacket still on, holding the lease papers Connor had given me. They were warm now from my hand, like they'd absorbed some part of the anger I wasn't showing yet. I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, staring at the ceiling like it might spell something out for me. Her voice drifted in and out of my head. Phrases I hadn't even realized I'd memorized. Trust me. Don't make this about your anxiety again. I'm just tired. Evan, why does everything have to be suspicious? She always knew how to twist the screw, just enough to make me question myself. And I let her. That's the part that really clawed at me. Not just what she did, but how easy it had been for her to paint my concern as instability. That manipulation doesn't show up in evidence folders. It doesn't come with a receipt, but it breaks something deeper. By dawn, I had a plan. I would see the unit later, when I could be alone with whatever was inside. First, I needed to go back to the place where this all began. River North. Connor's building was one of those polished towers with a lobby that smelled like eucalyptus and power. I walked in with my shoulders squared, pretending I had every right to be there, and apparently I did. The receptionist looked up from her desk and said my name before I reached her. Mr. Lane. I nodded. You're expected. Go ahead. 23rd floor. There it was again. Expected. As if this was a meeting I had requested. As if my name was already being passed around like a scheduling note. The elevator dinged softly as it opened. 23 floors of smooth jazz and polished silence. When the doors parted, I stepped into a corridor that felt like the inside of a jewelry box. White walls, glass office fronts, modern art that probably meant something to someone. Connor's door was already open. His assistant waved me in without looking up. Connor stood near the corner window, arms crossed, dressed like he'd just walked out of a tailored menswear catalog. He turned as I entered, calm as ever. I didn't think you'd come back so soon, he said. You gave me an address. Felt like a starting point. He motioned to the chair in front of his desk. There's more. I didn't sit. I don't need more from you. I need it from her. He raised an eyebrow, walked over to a slim drawer beneath the credenza, and pulled out a slim black folder. This won't change your mind, but it will confirm it. He laid the folder open. Inside were a set of access logs, again, different from the last. These ones went deeper. Every scan of Kelly's badge, every off-hours entrance, every door opened under her credentials. But one line stood out. Room 6C 3:17 a.m. Accessed by K. Lane plus guest. He tapped it with one finger. She didn't bring me, and I own the building. Do you know who it was? He hesitated, then nodded. I've seen him twice. Once here, once at a bar near the peninsula. Not staff, not a vendor, just familiar. You said you ended it with her. I did, because she was cheating on you, with someone else while she was cheating on me with you. Connor gave a tired, cynical smile. Yeah, that about sums it up. I took a breath, slower than usual. She said the Leica was from her family. She told me it belonged to her father, said it was passed down. I believed her. I nodded, trying not to picture her saying it, telling that lie like it was bedtime folklore. She was always good at narrative. And now, I asked, where is it? Connor stepped aside and pressed a button beneath the cabinet shelf. A slim drawer slid open to reveal a neatly packed case, too large for just a camera. It had fragile stickers and tamper-evident seals around the edge. I had it moved to a storage unit, he said. Didn't feel right to keep it. Why didn't you just give it back to her? Because I figured eventually she'd burn the next guy too, and someone should know where the trail ends. He handed me a key. Plain, brass, no markings except a tag with the number 88B. You said you're not angry, he added. I'm not, I said. I'm awake. The ride to the storage facility took just under an hour. It was on the city's edge, halfway between forgotten warehouses and brand new condos that hadn't figured out who they were for yet. Unit 88B was in a separate, temperature-controlled annex. I passed through 2 security checkpoints. One scanned the key. The other scanned my ID. Been sitting here a couple weeks, the guard at the second door muttered. Locked tighter than Fort Knox. When I finally stepped inside the unit, the cold hit me first. Then I saw the crate. It wasn't large, but it was sealed in a way that told me someone didn't want it reopened. Screws lined the perimeter, and the wood had been reinforced with steel brackets. No shipping labels now, just a thin black marker stroke across the top. Private. I brought a screwdriver, the kind Kelly used to mock for being over-prepared. The screws resisted, stripped, partially glued. Someone had tampered with them or tried to make it look that way. I worked one corner loose, then another. Inside, foam padding. Then the Leica. It looked untouched first, but when I lifted it out of the case and turned it over, I saw the truth. The bottom screws were loose, one side panel slightly ajar, and inside, where film should have been, was something else. A spool of negatives, wrapped in plastic. Next to it, tucked into the cavity, was a small envelope. Fake IDs, bank statements, 2 birth certificates for Kelly Lane with different parents, a hospital discharge record for a Charlotte Danes, and at the bottom, a micro SD card. My hands were shaking now, not from shock, but from the adrenaline of vindication. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This was identity fraud. This was a woman with multiple names, multiple origins, multiple endings, none of which included me. I took out the camera, closed the crate, pocketed the SD card, and for the first time since the party, I allowed myself to feel something close to clarity. Kelly hadn't just betrayed me. She had used me, my workshop, my tools, my trust. She needed access to something that didn't trace back to her, and I was the perfect mark. I stepped out of the unit into the sunlight that now felt artificial. The camera weighed more than it ever had, and somewhere, beneath all of it, the truth had finally taken shape. I didn't go home right away. After what I'd found in that crate, I didn't know where home was supposed to be anymore. I drove aimlessly for about 30 minutes, the Leica sitting quietly on the passenger seat beside me like a witness to a crime. The same camera I had poured half a year into restoring. Its screws stripped, its belly filled with forged identities, its lens removed like an afterthought. She didn't even leave the glass in. There's something sick about that level of planning. It means this wasn't impulse or weakness or passion. It wasn't a fling. It was a blueprint, an operation, a setup. The micro SD card was the part that rattled me most. It was taped to the bottom of the foam insert, easy to miss. No label, no case. I didn't open it in the car. Something told me not to. Not yet. I ended up at the only place I knew would be quiet, my workshop. I unlocked the roll-up door, walked into the dust and silence, and slid the Leica back onto the shelf where it belonged, right next to the cameras I hadn't touched in weeks. It didn't look like part of a con. It looked like part of my life, like it always had. Then I took out the envelope. The documents were folded tight, probably to fit into that tiny cavity she'd created inside the camera body. 2 birth certificates side by side. Kelly Lane, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, parents listed, Daniel and Harper Lane. Kelly Lane, born in Omaha, Nebraska. Parents: Jeffrey and Susan Lane. Different dates, different hospitals, identical names, no hospital stamps, no state seals, just photocopies, real enough to fool someone who wasn't looking too closely. But I was looking, now more than ever. Then there was the discharge slip. Charlotte Danes, same date of birth as one of the Kellys. Admitted once for a minor head injury in Ohio, never followed up. The attending physician line was left blank. The bank statements came last. 3 accounts, 2 in her married name, 1 under Charlotte Danes. All held in obscure institutions, credit unions I'd never heard of, names that sounded regional and temporary. 1 account had 3 deposits listed under Consulting BCG, Bennett Capital Group. I dropped the envelope on the work table like it had started burning. And finally, I clicked the microSD into the reader on my laptop. 10 audio files. No labels. Just numbers. 001 through 010. A single folder titled archive_stash. I hit play on the first one. Test. Okay. This is the West unit. Connor doesn't know I duplicated the key. Evan's still clueless. I think he suspects something emotionally, but not practically. I can still use the workshop for at least 2 more weeks. I hit pause. She said it so casually. Still clueless. Like I was a child. Like I was a borrowed tool. I skipped to the 5th recording. Jenna's getting nosy. I might have to spin something about Evan's moods again. Keep her sympathetic. She always believed the best about him. That's useful. My jaw clenched. I hadn't even known Jenna was being manipulated too. File 6. Bennett thinks he's in charge, but he's got no idea what I'm moving. The Leica's just a decoy. The real docs are scanned already. The hard copy makes it traceable on purpose. That's the point. It creates a path if anyone follows too early. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I wasn't breathing. File 8. He's probably going to find the scarf. I left it too close to the ledger. Doesn't matter. The illusion of carelessness makes it believable. He still loves me. That's leverage enough to delay any damage until I'm gone. I turned off the audio. The silence afterward felt loud. Unforgiving. This wasn't betrayal. This wasn't emotional carelessness. This was theft. Psychological, personal, strategic theft. I wasn't just a husband who got cheated on. I was an alibi. I sat there in the half-lit workshop, surrounded by lenses, dials, shutter curtains, things I understood, and tried to imagine how long she had been building this, how far back the foundation of it went. Did it start with the Leica? Or with me? Maybe I was always part of the con. Maybe she had picked me because I worked alone, because I didn't ask questions, because I fixed things instead of breaking them. I opened the folder on the SD card titled archive_stash. Inside were address listings, coordinates, some handwritten in a scanned note that used my workshop's printer. I recognized the ink fade in the corner. One address was crossed out in red. The other had a note next to it. Key held by e-transfer when clear. And underneath that, P.O. Box 2784, Lockport. Physicals only. Burner must match Charlotte ID. My name, my tools, my shop. She didn't just use me to run the con. She used me to store it. I sat back and let out a breath that sounded more like a cough. Or maybe a laugh. I couldn't tell anymore. I'd been restoring a camera while my marriage was being deconstructed around me, while my workshop became her staging area. Every lens I handed her, every small repair, every unlocked cabinet. She turned my trust into a spreadsheet. There was no affair. There was a plan. The emotional betrayal suddenly felt like the least of it. It wasn't that she kissed another man. It was that she wrote me into a script I never agreed to act in. She knew I was methodical. She knew I kept logs, that I backed up every file, that I labeled my invoices, that I never threw away old receipts. She knew all that, and she still thought I'd never figure it out. That's the part that cut deepest. Not the lies, the arrogance. I put the SD card in a sealed envelope, slid it into the workshop safe where I keep backup negatives and discontinued parts. I added the forged documents, the crate lease, and the digital keyprint I'd printed from her phone that night at the party. Everything, all in one place. Then I wrote a single word on the outside. Lawyer. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. I just knew she couldn't be the one holding the final move. I turned back to the Leica. Sat like it always had. Innocent, classic, quiet. But now I knew better. I picked it up, twisted the body cap free, and looked inside. No lens, just the empty socket. The hollow mouth of a machine that had been gutted for something bigger than itself. There was a metaphor there. Maybe someday I'd care enough to finish it. But for now, I needed to find out just how deep the hole went. Because if Kelly Lane wasn't real, then who the hell had I married? She showed up at a 24-hour diner outside Joliet, alone, no makeup, coat half-zipped. Said she never meant to hurt me, just needed options. Slid an envelope across the table, cash for moral damages. The Leica lens, and a key to the P.O. box. I refused the money, took the lens, took the key. We're done, Kelly, or Charlotte, or whoever. I handed copies of everything to my lawyer, locked the rest in a bank vault. Back at the workshop, I replaced the lens, tightened the screws, advanced the film. The Leica clicked back to life with the gentlest snap. I took a test shot, light and shadow on the far wall. Felt like a ritual, like proof I still existed outside of her lies. I shelved the camera again, not as evidence, but as closure. She built a maze, I walked out of it, not healed but whole. And finally, I was the one writing the last line.